What's going on, everyone? We want to welcome you back to a new episode of Question the Narrative. And today we have another guest. We are very excited to have him. We're going to be talking about some very interesting topics. So we want you guys to make sure you're sitting down, strap your seatbelt on, and get ready for the ride. We got Big John with us today. And what's up, John? How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm very glad to be here.
Yes, we're glad to have you. I know that we've been kind of going back and forth for the past year or so. We haven't really been able to hook up, and now we have, and I'm very excited to have you, man.
Yes, definitely, definitely.
Yeah, so we'll just dive right into it, man. For those who don't know who you are, you want to just kind of introduce yourself, where they can find your work, and also just how did you get into the research that we're going to be talking about today?
Well, everybody knows me as Big John. You can find me on TikTok. That's where I started disclosing different information at Big John 24982. Usually, I say it's your old pal back again one more time.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I and then as for my background, just a regular person. Served in the military, right place, right time. And I'm somebody that I saw, not on social media. I saw TikTok at the end of 2020. Everybody that I was around was on it. I thought it was really just like a dance thing, like you just did dances on there. I didn't really understand it.
Yep.
And then once I started kind of, talking about different little topics about the Lord, because I did have a conversion in 2015 from an atheist to a follower of Jesus.
Amen.
And I just got on there and it kind of went with it. I prayed about it, and the Lord said, just go ahead and just say what you want to say. And within the disclosures of a NDA, I just went with it. So, and then the research did start from my conversion as a believer. And then I did have some dreams. I called a download, kind of like Paul got when he was blind for 3 days. I just kind of, I'm not going to say I'm a holy roller. I believe everybody has a chance in the message of the cross for redemption and repentance. And I kind of just walked that journey, literally the highways and byways. And then I just happened to work in an industry that, I've been successful in. So I've always been humbled. And the Lord has always provided for me, even though I didn't believe in him most of my life. And I'm just at a spot now to where I think that my mission is to spread the word of the gospel, tell people that we are all apostles, even though we may be the least of them, and talk about what I think the United States really is and just a lot of hidden history.
That's right. So, with that being said, that's a perfect segue. What do you think the United States really is?
My opinion is the United States is really Egypt.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
So, okay. What led you to first start thinking this? And secondly, what is some of your finds? Some evidence that kind of points towards this.
okay. The whole idea of that started out now when I was a young man and just a non-believer. And I served in the military. I actually did some analytical work for the Army before I joined. I was a contractor. I scored high on the GT. On the ASVAB, I had my GT score is high, so they kind of like, oh, let's do some work, CIA kind of stuff. Not really them, but they kind of, you sure you want to join? You might want to just, let's do some civilian work.
Right.
So, did that for a little while, and then, ended up joining the military, signed a contract. And now, when you're, and I think at that time, this is before 9/11, and it, was be all you can be, and you meet different people. And I feel like some of the topics that, when you're on guard duty or you're, out on a FTX or wherever you may be, you get bored and topics come up. But I actually felt when I think back that I never actually talked about anything that was considered a conspiracy. It was kind of, I don't think anybody ever mentioned that. But we had a lieutenant. He was a butter bar, and people who know that's the second lieutenant. He was a prior service NCO. He was an E7. He went to OCS and became a butter bar, second lieutenant. Well, he in turn became our platoon leader. Now, this guy would always tell us stuff like, hey, in the future, they're going to use these viruses and they're going to do this and that. And we were like, what is he talking about? And he'd always just tell us these, and we're like, yeah, whatever, LT, okay. Yes, sir. That's what we just tell him. Yes, sir. Yeah, you're right. And well, one time, and I'll never forget this, he told me, he said about the national parks. He said, what about the people in national parks? And I mean, I just, you hear about, Yosemite or whatever, and I just never thought about it. I didn't even know what a national park really was. Like, okay, you go there as a kid and they got swing sets or whatever. Right. and or they had like Jellystone, for the families, and I remember hearing that, but I just never really thought about what a national park really is. So, and he tells us, he's like, those are all old Egyptian cities.
What?
And I was like, what? And like Egypt. So that's probably some of the first things I've heard about Egypt. So this is 2000, 2001. And then of course 9/11 happened. And the whole dynamics of the military change, it's like it went to, because we got these things called strikers, took away the Abrams tanks, got us strikers, this and that. It was like a whole new urban warfare kind of dynamic. To me, maybe, maybe not, or maybe it did, but they knew where they were going with this, like where they were going to end up at with these urban tactics, into these cities. And so, and then at that time too, you got, war's heating up. You hear the talk, Bush gives speeches, whatever. And we never heard much about it. So we found ourselves in Kuwait in the end of 2002, particularly unit that I would belong to. So that's not everybody. And the actual, operation started, April the 18th. So way before that, there was a person that came and related to the U.S. ambassador. And here's the funny part. The U.S. ambassador really wasn't an ambassador to Iraq. If you look this up, we actually had a Polish guy as the U.S. ambassador to Iraq. And does that sound weird?
Yeah.
Okay. So there is no ambassador to Iraq during the actual engagement of 2003. So that's where the story starts. Everything's been confused at that very moment, that there's nobody even in between these two countries, because you're supposed to expel your ambassador when there's talk of war, right?
Uh-huh.
Well, it's a Polish guy, so he's not even an American citizen. Okay, well, this ambassador and his group of men, whether he's real or not, we don't know none of this stuff. He comes talk to us, and he's like, we're going to get some antiquities. I'm sorry, I don't think I can say it right. And say it for me.
Antiquities?
Antiquities.
Antiquities?
I got that country accent. So sometimes you can't, people don't laugh. So here's the thing. Okay. They got us thinking that it's going to be like, here's my first thought, guys. Indiana Jones. Love that series. Okay. Mm-hmm. I automatically think that. I'm like, museum and get some stuff out, right? Okay. Indiana Jones. Well, that's what they run with, because this is a group of all young guys. And they offered us, like, would we pay for your services? And they were like, okay, so this group's going to run it, that did a lot of service work in Iraq. And people probably know what I'm talking about. They had truck drivers. They did the food distribution. This is all, of course, later. This is not even the actual engagement of April. But this group of people, they did years after they did all the fuel transportation, the food, the cafeterias. And it's 3 letters. People probably know what I'm talking about. I just don't want to say it. So anyhow, it was them, and they offered us, they tossed these coins at us. These coins had a tower on it, had like a crescent moon on there, and they told us this was from Ur. Now this is Ur, right? Nobody had any idea what that was. they're like, oh, it's an old coin. Look, this could be y'all's. And they're like, these are priceless. This is currency from a time that you would never. And we're kind of like just looking around like, well, okay, yeah, let's, okay, everybody, we got coins now. Nobody even begs the question of what this really is.
Right.
So we're offered that. And then it goes from there. I was like, well, because they talked about the pay and this and that. I was like, well, these contract guys get a lot of money. So anyhow, so we're all, just, okay, we're going to go along with it. We're all young. Nobody knows anything. Here's the next thing that happens. They ask us, and of course, when it first happens, I never thought about it. But then they ask us, do you believe in Jesus? And I said, no. Because that my personal thing was I grew up being forced to go to the Catholic Church with my grandparents my entire life, learn all these prayers, look at all these pictures that, Jesus had blonde hair and blue eyes. That just how, and I always thought that was weird. I said, why are they pushing this on me? And I said, I don't think the guy looked like that anyways. That was my own opinion.
Right. And
so when they asked me this, I'm like, nah, I'm as far away as that as I can be. But it never resonated to why would they ask that? So that was the thing that I don't know if it's the atmosphere or if it's double speak or whatever, but it gets you. You just don't ask questions. You don't ask yourself again, like, why would they ask that? You don't ever investigate.
Right.
So, but they did end up, I found out later that they asked everybody that. Well, nobody begged the question, well, why would you ask me that? And like I said before, that's how the ritual works. Because if you have anybody who has even a thought, because here's the thing, Luciferians know that God's real, Jesus is real. So, and they know the stories. They can't have somebody, as the parable of weathering the fig tree. The disciples thought that they couldn't do it, but Jesus is like, yeah, you can do it. You have little faith. So if you have just the smallest belief in the Lord, that ritual will not go along. It will not work. And but all that is later known by me. That wasn't anything I just said was known 20 years later. So, so we go along with it. I was level 1, tier 1. That's top level. You don't have anything. I was only told that it went down to 4, but you don't have clearance. You have clearance for only that. So even though you have clearance for level 1, tier 1, if you end up in level 2, you could be considered a threat, and then things could happen to you. That's how tight that stuff really goes. And you don't have on, I call it black label. It's a thing to where you take off your name tag and patches. You just wear your BD uniform, so you have nobody knows who you are. That's also a no too. Don't ever do that around. If you ever have to have guard duty around CIA, which I call babysitters, don't ever do that, because if they do something to the prisoner, they'll blame it on you. They're like, oh, look, he took his tags off. He was always on. You know what I'm saying? They blame you. So that's why you never get involved with that. So anyhow, you do that, a black label, and then we end up, and it's like it's about 2 a.m. We get a couple 5-ton trucks, and this place is nice. It's calm. There's stray dogs. There's people walking, just kind of business usual. Nothing even is thought of about any kind of war zone, because this is, I'm just going to say months before this, before April. So they say, okay, we're going to get these mummies. Okay. Or they got some mummies down there we want. And I'm like, oh yeah, mummies. Okay, cool. So go down and start bringing up stuff, different little things. Now, somebody must have already, I think the British were there trying to get some stuff. Because not long before they claimed they found Gilgamesh's things. This is like, I didn't know nothing. I didn't know who Gilgamesh was or anything. I didn't know anything. This is years later is what I'm retracting. Like what I'm saying is, like, I found this out years later.
Right.
So, supposedly they found that. And so I think they were already there. And that's my opinion. Now, when they brought up this long box kind of like a coffin, I guess. Not really much of a shape to it, rather than it was just long and rectangle. You were like, it looked oblong. I was just kind of like, if you ever seen boxes in your life, you're kind of like, well, why would they make that long like that? You know what I mean? That's the questions I asked.
Right.
And then they called for us to come over there, and now it's the ambassador with us, his team, us, and then they have a Navajo Indian. His name was Robert Three Eagles. Now they were all in the door. Now these doors are huge, long steps, this and that. Now the curator, they had two curators there. One was an Iraqi woman, and the other one was a white lady. And this is my opinion, that I think that was Maria Orsic. I never could prove that. That's just a gut feeling tells me that's her. I know that lady's probably 1,000 years old or whatever she was, but and people can research Maria Orsic, but I think that was her, or a clone or whatever. So we get gestured to come over there and start kind of like closing in a patrol stance around this stuff. And right there inside the doors, okay, there was, and this is a tablet. I have a picture of my TikTok. Now, there was a tablet there, and I'd say made out of gold or bronze or whatever. And it just had, you didn't need, this is how I say, you don't need, like the hieroglyphs that they show you nowadays. You didn't need an interpreter for this thing, right? Anybody could walk up and say, well, there's a jet plane, or there's a skyscraper, or there's a, like you could just make it out. You didn't have to be educated or anything.
Right.
And they were just passing by this stuff. And I told my buddy, I was like, look at that. I was like, what did that come from? This is a museum of Babylon. And that's the thing. It's almost like they brought us in with no clue. Like nobody even thought about Babylon. I never thought about history like that.
Wow. So
it's like they knew what they were doing with the ritual. They knew that they're going to bring a bunch of dummies that, that are like talking about, picking boogers and smoking cigarettes, you know what I mean? Like a bunch of army guy stuff. And that's what they did. They're smart. Luciferians think about that stuff. So, we have no knowledge of them, but I'm thinking, well, this is a museum, but that's a skyscraper, and that's a jet plane, and this is all these things. And so they have this one thing with a planet on it, and they have a bunch of like rays coming out of it. Looks like a pincushion or something. And I'll never forget that. And I was like, well, that's, and then you started like little planets and stuff. I'm okay, well, it's the planets or whatever. And then you kind of think from history class, oh, they talk about planets or whatever. So I saw that, but the way that they were just like, we don't want that. We want this long box. I thought that was weird. I noted that. I said, why do they want this? Okay. So I never knew it was in the box. This was what I was told what was in the box. It was Osiris.
Oh, wow.
And he was in his 13 pieces.
What?
That's what they said. And this is now I disclosed that, and then I never wanted to talk about, and I did this on TikTok when I felt compelled to through prayer. Like they talked about God having a wife, and they mentioned Ishtar. And I had held that in, but so go back to the operation. What came out next? The egg came out. Very large egg capsule structure. What do you want to call it?
Oh, wow.
And
did this actually look like an actual egg?
Yes. It looked like an egg with like what you would say with like an Easter egg breaks in half, right?
Oh, man.
Right.
Okay. So the equator, I call that the equator. Around the equator of this egg they brought out, they had these copper quartz diamond shape. I guess they were locks or something, because the only reason, because Robert Three Eagles said, we don't have the light to open them. There's not enough light to open these. So these things were like light activated.
Oh, man.
Wow.
That's crazy. I don't mean to interrupt, but that reminds me of something. Have you ever saw the show Under the Dome? Big John?
Was that on the regular channel like NBC or something?
I can't remember what channel it was on when it first came out. I think I've been watching.
like it showed like a fire truck crashing into the dome or something.
Yeah.
Like they couldn't get out. Okay, I do remember something like that.
Okay, well, the reason I ask, it's really weird that you mentioned this egg thing, because in the show there's this egg that they find in the center of that dome, and they're obsessed with it. And when they
Yeah.
touch it, it lights up.
Oh
And
gosh.
yeah, like
Yeah.
it is the weirdest thing ever. But I just thought, that really related to what you're saying, and I was wondering if you'd seen that show.
I didn't know that. Now that's something else we could have had, because we talked about that on Global Watchmen about the egg. The egg thing took off like maybe 7 months ago. With like Rihanna wore an egg dress, and then something else was like they started taking out TikTok videos of people talking about the egg.
I don't doubt it. I know
And
that egg is significant. If you saw the show, you'd see what I'm talking about.
Okay, that's one more extra. That's the extra thing, because I always wondered how, because when I talked about the egg on TikTok, they ain't none of this stuff. It was like a year before any of this came out. Like, I just mentioned it. I never said nothing about it again. Just, I said, well, I'll say it once and then let it go from there.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had this egg thing. Remember, even the eggs were like expensive, and then they were like, getting rid of chickens and all this other weird stuff. But I don't know what it could have been. But yeah, the egg thing was like a big story for a couple months.
Yep. Yeah.
And the first thing that, like, in my comments were about when Lady Gaga came out in an egg, and I said, oh yeah, so that's all Babylon. The egg, because I'll tell y'all something else. I was told this too. I do believe it. I was told that rabbits laid eggs in Mesopotamia.
Wow.
What?
Rabbits were you remember the Cabbage Patch Kids?
Yeah.
Okay, here's the thing nobody thinks about. What was the little fairy? It wasn't a stork. It was a rabbit that laid an egg in a cabbage, and the kids came out of the cabbage.
Wow.
That's all from Babylon. And that was Babylon or Sumeria. That was all, that's all the same thing.
So Babylon, do you think the Babylon was actually, that was the real Babylon over there somewhere around Baghdad? Used to be.
Only because, now I'll tell you this. Now, okay, back to the egg.
Yeah.
She came out in the egg. I heard them say her name because that was their queen.
Oh man,
that's what they've been waiting on.
What?
And then they said, now I disclosed that on my video when the ambassador, the direct was the ambassador talking, and then the high priority, which was our guy to protect, was Robert Three Eagles. They had a discussion about, this is our queen, and then Robert Three Eagles said she's already come through as a child through the gate.
Man, I got to bring up something else. This is crazy. This is great. I was telling Ricardo a little bit about this show, just before we brought you on today, and in the weeks prior. This is crazy. Okay, so in this show, Under the Dome, it is about this egg, the dome, and a queen that comes. Yep. She somehow comes in through the dome, and this egg gives her power. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty fun. That's something I never seen that show. Yeah.
She takes over the entire town that's trapped under this dome. Takes over everything. Takes over people's minds. Starts manipulating people's thoughts. Like totally, they were worshiping this queen. They called her their queen, and they kept talking about the kinship.
Yeah, Ishtar's all about that kinship.
That's great. Big John, you've got to watch Under the Dome. It is so symbolic. And after what you've seen and experienced with the real egg, I'm guessing you'll see all kind of similarities and symbolism.
It will remind me. Yeah, definitely. It'll start reminding me.
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy. What a coincidence.
The egg thing. You just think it's like, oh wow, what's that? And then when they start talking about it, you're like, what? A woman's in there? Like what? And it just kind of, and then you don't know what to think. You're kind of like, we'll just let them do their thing, load it up, I get paid, and then we're out of here.
Yeah.
So when you saw that egg, you said that there was like like diamonds or something going around it. And so I'm bringing you back here. You said that there wasn't enough light. And so does that mean like there needed to be more light for it to be hatched or
You
something?
had to be more light to unlock those things, is what he said, because
Oh,
they were shining their flashlights. Now at the time, you know, what 2003, you don't you have your angle head, you know, which in those days it was a regular little bulb. You had your 2D batteries in it, and I don't even think like I could be wrong, but I don't remember anybody having any kind of like. I think mag lights were the most powerful light you could have.
Probably.
I don't think nobody even had lumens, you know, LED bulb flashlights in those days. I don't remember that, but they were shining, and and he said, no, there's not enough light. We have to have, you know, like sunlight, and of course you weren't having that because it's 2 a.m.
Right.
So, and I don't think they really wanted to get their, you know, queen out. And this is me thinking back, like they didn't want to get their queen out on the middle of the street, you know.
Sure. Yeah.
So, but they were just they were mesmerized by that thing. Like we were all kind of like, I wonder how much that's worth, you know, and it's weird looking.
Yeah.
But they knew what it was.
Wow.
wow. So after they're bringing it out, then what happens?
They loaded it up on the back of a 5-ton truck, and they had a Chinook waiting.
How big was this egg?
Not it wasn't. It was large, but like, let me think. Maybe 8 foot long by 4 or 5 foot tall. I guess it looked like it kind of looked like the one I looked at the picture of Lady Gaga one. It was more fancier than hers, but it was something like that. It's something a human could get in.
Wow. That's wild.
And the egg, was it as we perceive like the normal material an egg would be in, or
It was like a white or an off-white color. It was kind of fancier toward the bottom, like toward the butt, I guess you would call it, not the not the regular oval pointed shape.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, with the had the equator, I call it, where it would open, and then but it had nothing like on top. And then material wise, I mean, obviously, I don't think you could like. I don't know if it was
break it?
metal or not. I don't know. It maybe porcelain. It looked like porcelain.
Right.
Okay.
And that's that's definitely a guess. It might have been some kind of out of this world material. I don't know.
So do you think that egg like somehow was some sort of stasis chamber or something,
It
and then
definitely,
once
and this is why I say that. Now, not long ago, I had a dream about that egg, and I feel that the Lord told me that it wasn't hers. Now this, and I went on the record, and I started researching, like that time of expiration, probably in the late 1800s until 1915, the Germans were the ones who investigated Mesopotamia, the archaeologists.
Right.
And even some of the early, you remember the Anunnaki, which was the Nazis' cult group. Okay, the Anunnaki, along with the Vril, those are all pretty much the same people. So they were already in Mesopotamia, digging up this stuff long before any thought of a Nazi party even existed. So, this is how I connected it. There was a Greek philosopher named Sirios, and he wrote 15 books. Now, a German archaeologist found the first 3 books at Ishtar's Gate, about 20 Baghdad. And the first book he ever wrote. Now, we're going to go back to the Egyptian connection. The first book that Sirios wrote was called the Book of Egypt, and that's what they found. And in that book, and I'll get y'all the links for the book.
Sure.
I read, and this is what it said. It said, in the beginning there was an egg that was delivered to the earth, but guess who was in it, guys? It was Osiris's egg. He was delivered in the egg, and then Ishtar took it because it was a med bed. So go back to your stasis and healing and stuff.
Mhm.
Ishtar was in it.
Dude, this is trippy. That's
This is what, and this was written 500 years before Christ.
That's wild.
When that was written. And it was found in Baghdad, south of Baghdad in 1915.
Okay. I got to bring this up. I can't help it, but notice these similarities. Back to the show Under the Dome. Okay, so these people had dug some kind of an underground little bunker tomb type thing, and there were these big eggs in there, and the people of the town, they didn't know what they were for until the queen came. When the queen came or invaded, whatever, she started, putting their little plan or plot together. Well, anyways, her plan was to lure the people of the town down underground and get them in these eggs.
Oh man.
Yeah, when they went into these eggs, they whatever illness or whatever was wrong with their body was healed
them. Yeah, they're med beds. Yeah,
they came out, they didn't need their glasses anymore. If they wore glasses, if they had like an old injury or a limp, they were healed of that. Dude, it just sounds so similar to what you're telling me. It's wild.
I mean, the egg, and we, like I said, I'm just referencing, when I did the other podcast, but
yeah,
they would come to find out. Now think about this too. Okay, so the Egyptians had these med beds too,
mm-hmm.
because everything's Egyptian. That's the original. I'm gonna say this: the Anunnaki are the original Egyptians.
Okay.
The fallen. We'll say fallen. The fallen angels are the Egyptians. That's them. That's who everybody took after. What we see in Egypt was people assimilated into a city of Heliopolis. It already existed. They just arrived there. They didn't build none of that stuff. Same with the pyramids. So they're already there. My opinion, before Adam. So yes, the med beds. Now let me ask y'all this: what do you take to become a doctor or a nurse? What are the tests called? What's the acronym for it?
Oh yeah, what's that? The
MCATs.
MCATs.
Okay. Let me tell y'all something else. Do you know the cats that have an M on their forehead? Where are they from?
Egypt.
Okay, so most of your openings for different, like, a cave was found in Utah, and also the Grand Canyon shaped like an M, and the guy said they had a humming coming from it. Those were med bed caverns. You go into there, the frequency heals your wounds, heals your anomalies, and you come out fresh.
Wow.
But the cats did the same thing. The MCATs, you go in a sarcophagus, and you had all the MCATs all around you, and you came out medically cured.
Wow.
There's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah.
Right.
That's very interesting.
Crazy.
And so you're saying that Ishtar was in that egg, and then what was in that coffin or whatever else?
The box. It was Osiris and his pieces. Now, to their story, you had Osiris. Now, Osiris was cut into 26 pieces originally, and they narrowed it down to where they threw the 26, but they could only find the 13. Well, the 14th piece is what they really wanted.
Didn't you say that was like his,
his phallus?
His genitals.
Yes,
yeah,
genitals.
Yeah.
So what you're going with is this is Ishtar went along the Nile River, and different stories, different cultures say different things. A fish ate it, alligator ate it, whatever. The point is she couldn't find it. So she only found 13 pieces. And she put all the pieces together again, and then she got gold. She got monatomic material, and she made a obelisk, a phallus, dildo, if you will. And she put it on his body. and she performed intercourse with him and got pregnant with Horus. And that's called the apotheosis.
Wow.
This is nuts.
All Egyptian.
Yeah.
So if you look at the Vatican, Heliopolis, and them in Washington, D.C., it's built like Egypt. The reason being, you have the Washington Monument, which is a obelisk or a phallus.
Mm-hmm.
It faces the dome of Capitol Hill. That's her pregnant belly. And in between, you have the reflection pool, which mimics the Nile River. So you have the apotheosis in Washington, D.C. Not to mention, you go in there, there's a painting on the ceiling called the Apotheosis of George Washington. That is Osiris.
No way.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I have been, when I fuss about this on TikTok, every Freemason, no offense, but they don't like when I say it.
Oh,
Yeah.
Dang, it's wow.
But it's, and then you look at the Vatican. Well, what's in the Vatican? You have St. Peter's Basilica, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It's a dome, right? What's in the middle? What's in the Vatican Square? The obelisk facing the dome with what? The water. Well, why is it like that? Because it's Egypt. And you look at Heliopolis, the original Egyptian city. The obelisk that was there was stolen by who? The Vatican. Where is it at now? In St. Peter's Square.
Wow.
So they created like a little mock version of Egypt.
Yes, Heliopolis. Heliopolis is the most important city to any Luciferian.
Heliopolis.
And
And Heliopolis was in Egypt. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, where did it mirror from? Lebanon. What was Lebanon? Phoenicia. The capital was called Sidon.
Mm-hmm.
Sidon is where Pythagoras and most of your fathers of Freemasonry learned space and time division, 33.33, by the fallen angels. That also was the second incursion of Genesis 6:4 when it says, and also after that, that's where it happened at in Sidon.
Dang, this is wild.
And then real quick, what's the part of Mars that has pyramids on it? Cydonia. What's that? Sidon. It's the same word.
Yeah.
Wow.
And what does pyramid even mean? Pyramid means in the original Greek photonic, when you meet Greek photonic in syllables, that's the Greek alphabet. Pyramid literally means mound of Mars.
Mound of Mars. Wow.
Can't be denied.
Yeah.
Everything's Egypt.
So, is Egypt a lot larger than what most people perceive to be? I know that there's like everything kind of is pointing back to Egypt, like what you're saying, but I'm talking about just like the actual land mass itself.
The actual land. Okay, I'm gonna tell you something else.
Okay.
The land mass of what we see in Egypt.
That's not real Egypt.
No. It was a mirrored, it was a as above, so below. So let's go further into the sky. Not everybody believes in planets. It's flat earth is a good theory. I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. The thing is, the only reason why I believe in planets because I know what I saw on that tablet.
Mm-hmm.
And these people were smart and they knew a lot of technology, even though you would think that stuff wouldn't exist. So that's why I think planets are real. Here's the second part, because the planets are in the Bible. I'm going to tell you where Egypt comes from. In the book of Job, there's a mention of a planet called Rahab that God destroyed. That's the original Lucifer's throne of Egypt was on that planet. It's now the asteroid belt. And also that planet was also the first angelic wars. There were 3 wars in the universe: Rahab, Mars, and the Earth.
Okay. Yeah, and so with that, like I'm just thinking about like the whole planet thing. I think like the Bible like calls those the wandering stars. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
So that's That's interesting because even those wandering stars, they're different from the other actual fixed stars. But like we wouldn't particularly I kind of believe in more like the biblical cosmology where the outer space is actually not what we think it is. Um but I could go for like, even that word outer space to where those planets that you're talking about, they're actually different land masses within the actual realm, if that makes
Yeah,
sense, but
could,
not.
yes, exactly. Yeah, it could be that too. That's what I'm saying. It's like it's all logical to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
I only say it as that I know that they knew, the ancients knew, because they were shown. How did the Phoenicians know how to do the nautical miles of the earth? Because they were taken up and they saw it.
right.
Mm,
Just like when Jesus says he was shown all the nations, the Lucifer took him up into the air and said, "Look, I'll give you all this." So that's
right.
possible to see everything at one time.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you look at Obadiah, you make your nest among the stars, and nest is like homely, it's home, it's thrones,
Right.
and I will pull you down, saith the Lord. And so that's, I'm not a philosopher. I think about the wording, and I think about, like, I know Rahab was a thing, and the only thing that ever concreted it for me was the fact that these civilizations all talked about Rahab, and we'll get into that here soon. But it's like the planet with the pincushions coming out of it. That's what that was. That was Rahab. Those were stargates evacuating because God blew it up.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. Um, I kind of okay. So have you? I don't know if you've read the Book of Enoch much, but it kind of explains what you're a little bit of what you're saying there. I do believe that the fallen angels came from these celestial bodies in the sky.
Yeah,
You can call them planets, but I don't think that they're worlds like what we live on. But I do
yeah,
believe, according to Enoch and even many passages in the Bible, that certain angels were in charge of these luminaries. And we
yeah,
know that, at least 200 of these angels descended down. They left their celestial domain,
yeah.
their
The first state. Yeah,
there, and they came down here and they corrupted mankind, and mated with women, created the Nephilim, the giants, all that. So yeah, what you're saying, there's some truth to it, but I think they weren't actually other worlds. They were just celestial bodies that these angels were in charge of, and I don't know why they got it in their head that that wasn't good enough for them. You know what I mean? Wanted to leave um, the
yeah.
position God gave them and come down here and do what they did. But
And that's the ones that he's most pissed at, because
yep,
the 200 because the 200 were still in his realm.
right,
Whether you think it's the divine counsel of Psalms 82 or actually,
Mm,
in Abraham's bosom, they
right.
left the goodness
hmm,
and made a pact, 200 of them. And then now they're all bound in chains.
yeah, it's
And
like
that's the ones that Enoch preached to. And they said, "Hey, Enoch, you're close to him. We want to ask him when we will be released." And he said, God said, "Go back down there and tell him on the last day, I'm gonna judge them and then destroy them."
yeah,
And then while the ones who fell with Lucifer, they're just, obviously all around us and do what they want.
yeah, yeah,
But it's just the fact that, yeah, the 200 that came and did that, he don't like him. He's really, I got something for him.
Yeah.
But yeah, so if they, and like I said, that's all logical to me,
right,
because we can't either prove it but it all. I don't ever get in arguments, because it's like, yeah, that's logical. It could very well be that.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So
Um,
do you think it's possible that like for instance, Jude references that these the wandering stars during chains of darkness, foaming out their own shame, they're being held there till judgment day, like you said. Do you think it's possible that Osiris, Ishtar, and those those type beings, you think they're part of the fallen angels? That
100%.
yeah,
And I'll say this now. I always go back to a planet reference, whether, and I keep it simple. Just let's just say that it is a landmass like ours, right?
Yeah.
Now, and the only reason I say that is because of the family of the bloodlines. I've listened to too many people that were definitely what I would say Illuminati. They have the parasitic third helix on their DNA,
Mm-hmm.
and they always talk about the Maximilian family is your Rothschilds, which means Red Bear. All that stuff goes back to the Maximilians. The Maximilian family is they'll tell you World Economic Forum. This is what they talk about, and they say it, but nobody cares. But they'll say we are from Mars. Our bloodlines go back to Mars, and that's where Nimrod was. That's where they come from, because you had Nimrod and Osiris is the same thing. It's the same person, different cultures.
Right.
And when he became Gilgamesh, that's when he transformed into a giant, a Gibram. And the reason why they have him as like the Oscar is him. They give you the Oscar award, and Hollywood's called Babylon. They give you the Oscar. That's Nimrod, because you change. You have become the greatest actor. Well, that's when Nimrod became Gilgamesh. He did what they could not do. He did what the fallen angels couldn't do. He was born a human, and he became them. They had to masquerade as a man to mate with women.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
And when you think about Jesus's birth, people always say, well, the Nephilim were angels. No, they had to become men and have actual intercourse with the woman like humans do, while Jesus was a divine conception to where only God could literally pass through and make it happen. Has nothing to do with it, because I'm sorry to say, but intercourse was not in the Garden of Eden. That came after the fall. So he didn't have to do that. People, try to put Jesus in a box or God in a box, like, oh, well, he can't overcome that. Yeah, he can. So, that was the difference, because like I said, the Nephilim they can take heaven's technology and show humans, but they can never take all the technology. They can't do what he does.
No.
That's why they had to, manipulate the genome and the DNA, because they couldn't do that. He scooped up dirt and made man. They have to get in their little labs and start, do it the hard way.
Right.
So that's, they're always trying to get back at him.
Yeah.
So, and I'm trying to think of the point I was trying to make, because, like I said, I start on these different topics.
Yeah, you were talking about like Rahab and Mars.
Yes, Rahab. So Mars, yes, they come from Mars. Now, this is, kind of out there. I believe it 1,000,000%. The Tower of Babel was a biomedical facility. It was a lot of things in one. Number one, it had the entire Earth's population there. It was the same age as America. It was 244 years after the floodwaters receded that everybody was at the tower. You had one guy in charge. He had his own gospel. He had his own atmosphere. He was making these Ubermenschen, these supermen, just like the Nazis did. Like the Nazis got it from him. He had all this biomedical research going on there. He himself became a god.
Wow.
And he convinced everybody, because he had a Stargate, and we got that too, by the way. He had a Stargate to open up the heavens. And God said, I know what they can do. He wasn't thinking, oh, they were all being bad and mad at him. They opened up the portal to heaven. He goes, I know what they can do. That's why he split Pangea, split the languages, broke everything down.
Right.
Because he knew that with the help of the Nephilim, Nimrod did it. He had everybody convinced that they were going to fight. He built these super soldiers because he thought he was going to defeat God once he opened up the portal. Well, the Tower of Babel, like I said, everything is mirrored. They don't know anything new. Nephilim don't know anything new. It's the same old dog and pony show.
Right.
It's just on a new group of people. That's why when the circus comes to town, if you've never seen the Bearded Lady, well, guess what? That's kind of cool, right?
Yeah.
Until you see another one, you're like, well, that's not cool anymore. I've already seen it. Well, that's the thing with the Nephilim. They can only trick you one time. It's like one chance. Like, we got one shot. We're going to try to get you with it. And then once you figure out their plan, it's like, oh no, I know what that is.
Yeah.
And if you look at Jesus, Solomon said there's nothing under the sun. Well, they had these biomedical facilities on Mars. And if you want just for a small glimpse, the stuff that they've been digging up. Now, there's somebody else on TikTok that probably be interested y'all would talk to too. I never got into these artifacts. I was offered artifacts at one time. I totally stay away from them because they don't scare me, but I'm like, I don't need that in my life.
Like they're cursed or something?
Well, yeah, because what they show, what is on them, you have, number one, it proves my point about the Egyptians, because how can the Toltecs, which had a civilization before the Aztecs near Mexico City, have Egyptian gods on their artifacts? How do they know what that is?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Also, they have these elongated skull winged creatures with snakes' tails that are holding these DNA. Now, the universal hieroglyph for DNA has never changed, no matter what culture it is. It's all the same double helix.
Right.
And they're holding this, and it's on these artifacts. And I'm like, to me, that is very dangerous stuff, because that is the Mars Rahab connection. And I feel it in my bones, and that's why I do not mess with it. I don't want any of that in my possession.
Right.
Because that, on a sense of terror, one of the topics I don't get into much is the Nazi transducism, which is very evil. And that's exactly what that is. And I'm like, I don't know if the Lord does it to me or my own self-conscious or whatever, but that terrifies me.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't get around it. So, but these artifacts have these creatures on there, and it shows them on Mars and these biolabs, and whether Nephilim stone glyphs are real or not, it has this language that nobody knows what it is on these artifacts. And it shows, some of the artifacts I've seen even show, it depicts women giving birth to elongated skull babies. These hybrid, these, and this is stuff to, like, people digging this stuff up are found dead. I mean, wow. That's how serious it is.
Right.
Because that narrative, to bring that out to the world, man, you know what I mean? That's like, nobody wants you to know that stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but yeah, that's when I see Egyptian gods and Anubis on stuff from the Toltecs and the Mayans, and it's like, how the hell do they know what that is if they weren't visited by it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's, and that's, the Pangea thing or whatever. But the Tower of Babel was a lot more than people think it was. It wasn't tall. It was just a Stargate, and it had a lot of stuff going on in there.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of disgusting things.
Yeah. So we were kind of digging into the whole Pangea thing as well. Just in the recent past. And do you think that that's how, like, a lot of these different cultures shared these similarities, because they were a lot closer? They weren't split up by the seas and whatnot.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. Because you think about, tell a story in your hometown. Well, once everybody moves away, everybody has a piece of the story, but it's only particularly for that one spot, right?
Mm-hmm.
The same thing as the tower. Everybody was there. Every human was at the tower. It wasn't, oh, well, this and that. It just, everybody was there. So I think one of the examples that I go back to the indigenous tribes of the Southwest United States. And now the Ute, the Hopi, Hopi, Ute, and what other tribe? What's the ones? Let me think. The three of those came from the Anasazi.
Man, I used to live in the Southwest in Albuquerque.
Okay, yes, you're close to that.
Well, not anymore, but I used to be around all that. The Native American stuff is really, really, heavy in that area.
Well, it is, and that's why the whole thing with the Smithsonian, the Smithsonian was the arm of the Vatican, and that's why the Smithsonian used, the U.S. Cavalry to really subdue, and you had John Wesley Powell with the Smithsonian using the theory of isolationism and Darwinism to keep the indigenous tribes subdued because they knew all the secrets.
Mm.
That's why they were so mean to them people, because it wasn't because, oh, we want this. Yeah, that was extra. Yeah, you get their land, but it's the knowledge they had. They could not let that out, that there were giants in those days and that there were chimeras in those days, and everything that the church wanted to control, from the Inquisition, from the Templars, or whatever. The people who lived here, as Christopher Columbus. Did you know Christopher Columbus has a book in the Library of Congress?
No.
No.
Well, that's the thing about Christopher Columbus. That's why they called him all these different names, because he wrote down the wrong stuff.
Mm.
He wrote down, wait a minute. Well, there's people already here.
Yeah.
Of all different walks of life. And that's why they're like, oh, no. Because I'm sorry to tell you, but 234 years before Jesus was born, Alexander Helios, the son of Mark Antony and Cleopatra, arrived on the California coast with 10,000 ships. And where do they settle at? The Grand Canyon. Isn't it funny you can't go in the Grand Canyon anymore in that area? Not to this day. Mm-hmm. Exactly where the pyramids were at, the ones that the Smithsonian blew up.
Wow.
Crazy.
So just going along with the whole Egypt thing, do you think like the Mississippi River could be the Nile, or what do you think about like just stuff like that? Just I'm trying to connect.
Yeah, it's very possible, because now thinking about it, what river passes through Tennessee close to Memphis? Is it the Mississippi?
Yeah.
Was it Memphis, the town where Ishtar is from in Egypt? Isn't that where she died at?
Is it?
Yeah, it is. What do you see when you drive into Memphis? What sign says "Welcome to Memphis"? What is it sitting on? An egg.
Really?
Yeah.
I was trying to think of that, because I live really close to Memphis. And
yeah, go to Memphis, across the bridge. It has an egg, says "Welcome to Memphis."
Yeah, and that really big Bass Pro Shop is just a big pyramid. And...
Yeah. Oh yeah. Because now think about this: all the lakes in East Tennessee, the Tennessee River Valley Authority, right? What were they part of? The Smithsonian.
Mm.
So what's in those lakes? Pyramids. Why can't you scuba dive in them lakes? Because they built all the dams to sink those things. They don't want nobody down there.
Wow.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and I was thinking about this the other day too, because we went to the zoo there the other day, and the Memphis Zoo is completely Egypt. Like everything is Egypt over there. It's crazy.
Because the Appalachian Mountains, if you put Pangea back together, that's the second part of the mountains in Egypt. They used to connect when it was Pangea.
Mm.
So what about, okay, so where do you think, if America's the original Egypt, wouldn't that mean that the true Israel is not the one we're told either?
Yeah, unfortunately. the Levant is a totally different system. Now,
the what now?
The Levant. The Levant.
What's that?
What Joshua, the conquest of Joshua when he ran out the Nephilim. Okay, so this is the important part, and nobody ever really thinks about Joshua. Joshua's book and the scripture is all about conquest, but people that I've ever talked to, including me at one time, always thought, why would he send if God's so loving, why would he send Joshua to kill men, women, and children?
Mm-hmm.
I never understood that until you really read it, that those things were hybrids. They weren't human.
They weren't human.
There were 13 different tribes. Some had double rows of teeth, some had long necks, some had elongated skulls. They were all Nephilim.
Right. That makes
And even when what did he tell Achan? Do not take the crystals, do not take the gold. That is sin in your camp.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and Josh had a copper sword. That's the only thing that defeated the copper armor that the giants wore. Because only copper defeats copper.
Okay.
Okay.
And they had crystals too. They had crystals and stuff around everything. Crystal balls. None of that stuff's fake. I mean, that's all that comes from them, the Nephilim. And then what did Joshua even reference? The book of Jasher, because the book of Jasher was called the War of the Lord. And he said, isn't it written in the book of Jasher that God stopped the sun for more than a day?
Yeah.
Because he needed that. He needed them to be unrested and off balance. The same thing when von Clausewitz wrote the book on war. He said, get to the enemy's center of gravity, the center of their sun, and you off balance them. So the warfare isn't just, it's all from God.
Right.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, that's a very controversial topic, even, because a lot of people, they think that landmass there in the Middle East, what they call Israel, and that they came back together in, what was it, like 1946 or 7, was it?
1947. They say 48, but the actual plan was 1947 because it was 1,947 miles from Solomon's temple when they made Israel a state in 1947. That's a little known thing too.
Okay.
It was how far from Solomon's temple?
1,947 miles.
Oh. Okay. So
when NATO got
1947.
Yeah, 1947. Yeah, it wasn't 48. It was 1947. They don't want you to know because 1947 is when you put a pyramid on a sphere. You put a 4-sided tetrahedron on each pole of a sphere, you get 19.47. The same year Roswell happened.
What?
That's nuts.
Yeah, everything's for a purpose, man.
Yeah. So where in your opinion, so if America's Egypt, where is the real Israel, like that we read of in the Bible, and what's the whole point in them faking it? You know what I'm saying?
I think here's why. There's my opinion on that.
Right.
I think the Levant is a lot more of a broad area rather than what Israel is now. The only reason why that temple was built there, and people can agree or disagree, but Solomon messed with a lot of different entities.
Right.
Yeah.
And that could be a whole, show or 3 shows in itself. But where he had built it at, my opinion is it was definitely over the main grid of the Pangea power plant. Because the Tower of Babel and the Giza Plateau pyramids weren't far from each other when it was Pangea. But I think Pangea was the original power grid that was powered, because the Giza Plateau pyramids faced the pyramids on Mars. I think it was an as above, so below kind of situation.
Okay.
But yeah, so I think the Levant was broader. I think a lot of it was in America only because the way Washington, D.C. was chosen and built, because no other area could match the measurements of like Ezekiel. So, and I made a video one time and I said, a person told me one time that a rattlesnake always goes back to where it's born. And I think a serpent they always come back to, so they always come back to America because that's where they were from. That's where they walked at. Wow. So that's why I think America is Egypt.
So just going along with that, what's the purpose for them to, because we've been digging into some crazy stuff lately. It's on a different topic, but it kind of applies. What's the whole reason with the whole 1776 though, and this is America? Like why do they change it? Like how come they don't want to let us know that we are in Egypt if that's true?
Because when Lucifer enters into the flesh and mirrors when God became man, It's going to happen underneath the rotunda in the Capitol Hill building.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's what they're waiting on. When
Wow.
Osiris, Apollyon, Lucifer, all the same thing, when he enters the flesh, that is the final Luciferian sacrament.
Right.
That's going to happen in America underneath the rotunda in the Capitol Hill building.
Wow.
Wow.
And just curious, what have you come across that kind of made you come to those conclusions about that?
There's a building. Number one, if you ever have an argument with a Freemason on TikTok, you can always talk about Albert Pike. Albert Pike was just some old fat goon. He wasn't anything.
Mm.
They'll always try to debunk you with him because they got their story ready. But if you mention Manly P. Hall and his book, The Secret Destiny of America, they will block you in a heartbeat.
Wow.
Because in that book, it tells you all the secrets that you need to know about the Phoenix Rising of America. And basically what they know. Because, and here's another thing that they don't want you to know. Down the road from the Capitol Hill building and the White House, there's a building called the Herodom Dome, ran by the Scottish Rite. That's their building. So every year for the inauguration, they have in that building during the inauguration, whoever's lifting their hand up, I don't get into politics, but whoever's lifting their hand up, whoever the real president is, they're doing the inaugurate.
It's a ritual.
They're doing the apotheosis ritual during the inauguration because they're trying to get Apollyon to go into the body of the president, just like it's painted in the Capitol Hill building with George Washington wearing his little, Freemason outfit, and he has, guess what, around him? 72 fallen angels. Oh, isn't that perfect?
Dang.
So, yeah, in that building, and they don't ever want you to know that they do that. They have the apotheosis ritual inside that building every inauguration, and they have that. They have the Bible buried at the Washington Monument. That thing's 6,666 feet tall, and all this other stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's Egypt. It's all even the layout is an owl. It's the 3 stars of Ishtar line up behind the Capitol Hill building and go down Pennsylvania Avenue. I mean, everything is built for that reason. It's not just, let's just build it because we're bored.
Yeah.
Everything is Egypt in Washington, D.C. The District of Columbia. Who's Columbia? Ishtar. The lady holding the torch, that's Ishtar. The Statue of Liberty, that's Ishtar's body with Osiris's head.
Yeah, I believe it.
Wow.
Yeah, for sure. Because I've been, when you compare the Statue of Liberty to picture that painting of Lucifer, look identical.
Yeah.
And I guess Lucifer probably, probably is Apollyon. It's the same person.
It's all the same person. Apollyon, Osiris, it's all the same thing. It's just different cultures.
Mm-hmm.
The dragon, it's him. It's just him. The rebel. It's just the Nakash and Hebrew, whatever. It's all the same thing.
Wow. That's super interesting.
Yeah. No wonder they all want to be president so bad.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. It's just everything goes back to that. The apotheosis. That's the most important thing. They never came off of that because it did what they couldn't do.
Right.
And you look at the 13 colonies. Well, that's the 13 pieces of Osiris. America is built all around Osiris in Egypt. That's all it is. 1776. If you count the stones on a dollar bill, it's equals to 1776. 1776 is, even the formula of it goes back to Mars. It's the, the 72-degree pyramid, the 5-sided pyramid and the face. And, the numerology is just uncanny.
Yeah, they like numbers.
Yeah, because that's how it's built. That's how everything is built off of numbers. I always reference, I never cared much about that movie, but remember when on Matrix, when they go in that room and have all the numbers running up and down and stuff,
Right.
the architect or whatever, that's what it is. It's just, they're showing you that's how everything is made by numbers.
Wow. Wow. So
Nothing happens without numbers.
yeah.
Just like, I'll be honest with you, even life itself, if you look at, if you want to get in the DNA and, John 1:1, y'all know what that says, beginning was the word, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the word is life. He breathed the word into Adam and he became man. And well, here's the thing. If the word of God, how many languages was it written in? 2, right? Hebrew to Greek. That's all
Right.
the original text. There's 23 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. There's 23 letters in the Greek alphabet. What's 23 plus 23?
46.
How many chromosomes you got to live?
46.
There you go. God is life, and there's nothing that can get by it.
Mm.
So even to exist is that, and
Yeah. Interesting.
that's why the numbers. The numbers are. Here's another analogy that I have. So people laugh about it. I don't know. Okay, so you're in heaven, right? And you don't want to be a Nephilim, but to say you are, say you're a fallen angel, and you're like, okay, I'm tired of being here. Well, you take with you, like, only 5 people know the ingredients in Coca-Cola, right? Well, just say God knows only what's in the Coca-Cola. Well, what do you got if you don't know what he knows? You got Shasta, you got Sam's Choice, you got you got different. It's cola, but it's not Coca-Cola.
Right.
Well, that's what all the fallen angels took with them. They took all the little ugly colas that nobody really drinks, but God has the Coca-Cola. So it's not as good, but it's good enough to trick you with.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's what fallen angel technology really is. It's Sam's Choice Cola.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Hey,
Yeah.
so I'm curious, and I'm loving this talk. Back when those guys were carrying that egg, I'm kind of going back to the egg, and they said that they didn't have enough light. Did they ever get enough light to do something with that? And if so,
Once it went on the truck, never heard about it again.
Okay.
What about? Okay, you said they found the Gilgamesh's body or mummy, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Is that or was that Osiris?
Well, it was Osiris, but the thing is too that when so the name changed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
We recognize it as the story of Abram becoming the first patriarch Israelite, and he got changed to Abraham because Abram turned away from the city of Ur, and in my opinion, he turned away from the Anunnaki technology on his own because nobody knew who Yahweh was. And he left that technology. He left Sumeria. And then God saw favor in him and said, on his own, he did this. He's going to be the first patriarch of my people.
Mm-hmm.
And turned his name into Abraham. Well, look at Saul. Saul was a horrible person. Jesus confronted him. He turned his life around. He became Paul. Well, the Luciferian side knows nothing else but the opposite. So when Osiris became a Gibberum, his name was changed to Gilgamesh. It's the same thing as a Christian theme thing, but it's a mirror because even Antichrist doesn't mean against, it means instead of.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So it's always been that. You can't have any kind of total, direct against because you'll know what that is. If the Antichrist comes on the scene destroying people off the back, they're gonna know who he is.
Exactly.
He's got to trick you first.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's the same thing as the name change. Everything's mirrored. They don't know nothing else. They only brought the Sam's Choice Cola with them.
Copycats, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah. All they can do is copycat God and give.
Yes. Everything's mirrored. Just like you think about, okay, so fallen angels come down, mate with women, they have kids. Well, isn't that the same thing as God coming down, passing through Mary, having Jesus? It's the same mirrored thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
They have to mirror it. So the last sacrament is becoming flesh, and that's the apotheosis.
yeah. So I'm wondering too, the whole mirror thing. So you know how they like the whole pyramids and all that. Is it possible that that symbol of the pyramid really isn't what we think it is? Like maybe there's pyramids up where God is and they're trying to replicate that here on earth. Is that a possibility?
Very possible. Very possible.
Okay.
Because everything references a pyramid, and that's the thing. We would never know if God had that because they've used that, and it's also it's become so popular in the occult
Mm-hmm.
that we don't. Maybe there's a small reason why they even do that. Maybe God was like, I don't like triangles. We would never know that.
Yeah.
But that could have been as simple as that. They're like, let's mock him.
Mm-hmm.
He used a square, build us a mansion. Let's use a triangle. It could be as simple as that. But the thing is that everybody's picked up on it and they worship it.
Right.
Because a pyramid in the mirror is as above, so below.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's people that actually kind of think that the New Jerusalem, when it descends down from heaven, that it might actually be a pyramid as well, which is kind of interesting. I know that's not real popular, but I have heard that.
And it may be.
I have heard that before, and so that's why they got, their whole like capstone on the dollar bill. It's just they're like obsessed with that because they're basically trying to usurp God using already what's in heaven. But like you said, they got the Sam's Choice Cola.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's interesting. It's crazy to think about, like you said, a lot of like Christians nowadays, they would like run the first 20 minutes we're talking right now. They don't even consider any of this information. They'll just think that you're absolutely nuts. And that's why people like us, we don't really fit into like a normal church setting like how it is today.
I get that too. And you're right. That's definitely the atmosphere. And I haven't in a long time, I haven't preached like I used to. But the thing is, even with, my experiences with converting, I was never forced to. I was just shown things. I was shown that Jesus was right because, and I didn't even see him. It was just him talking to me, but he was right. And I was so disconnected from, I hated him. I hated the thought of him. I hated any kind of a message that he brought goodness. I couldn't stand it.
Right.
But when he confronted me, only because someone put me on the altar, he told me that I'm only here because the innocence cries out for you. You have free will, do what you want. But when they cry out for you and put you on the altar, I will do something about it.
What does that mean? What do you mean about the altar?
If somebody puts you on the altar, the same way Abraham gave up Isaac to the altar to the death because of the allegiance to God, and Abraham looked down and guess what he had in his hand? Didn't he have a sheep? It wasn't really. God saw that he was so allegiant to him and so loving that he would give up his only son.
Right.
And he looked down and is like, it's not even the son, it's a sheep. But he did it anyways because Abraham loved God. Even though it wasn't going to kill Isaac, he didn't know that, but it was it was like the test.
Right.
So put you on the altar. Somebody cares enough about you to put you on the altar. And tell Jesus to do something about you.
Yeah.
And that's just my experience. That may not happen to anybody else. I don't know. But the way that it happened for me, maybe that was I think Jesus shows people different favor. It's not bad. I think he fulfills promises differently.
Yeah.
And I don't know his ways. I don't know his thoughts. They're way beyond mine.
Oh, yeah.
And I just know what my experience was. And he told me, innocence put you on the altar and cried out for you, for your salvation, to help you do something about you. And he stepped in. I don't know why that and here's the thing too. Everything he told me, he never forced me. I still had free will the entire time.
Right.
It was my choice of repentance and the belief in him that turned me around.
Yeah.
So once I had that and I realized that's the true message of the cross, it don't matter what walk of life you are. Don't ever, if you tell people that, a regular old Christian, well, you're going to do this and you're going to burn, blah, blah, blah. You're not going to reach anybody. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
But if I go out there and say, hey, you know what? And this is my experience. Do you have a relationship with Jesus? Well, I can't because he doesn't like me. Why? Because I do this. Well, did you talk to him about it? No. That's your first mistake. Because who are you listening to? Well, my friend said, I said, you listen to humans, bud. Don't listen to humans. Don't even listen to me. I'm just going to tell you this and I'm gone. Go get a personal relationship with the Lord in your prayer closet, in your truck, out here right now, whatever you think. But I was like, if you don't listen to humans, I can't tell you nothing else.
Right.
That grabs people.
Yeah.
That's the message of the cross. Because it ain't my problem what you do. I can't do nothing about it. Yeah. I can tell you that Jesus can do something about it if you even talk to him.
Yeah, and the modern day preaching is like almost, like they're like basically portraying God like God's begging them to come and this and that. But like even Jesus was never that way. He never begged anyone to believe in him or anything
that's what
like
I'm saying.
that.
He did so much stuff to me, put me in the abyss. I saw the creatures down there, took away my hope, all that stuff. That's fine. He just showed me what he can do.
Yeah.
That's all it was. This is what I can do.
Yeah.
And it wasn't anything else. And
sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine. That's it. That's what he can do to you. And that was it. It wasn't, he didn't say, now, what's your choice?
Yeah.
And the thing is, here's how wholesome that he is. You can't go against him. You think that you're gonna like hate him and tell him all these things. I'm gonna tell you off when you get here, bud, just like Paul did. Yeah. What did Jesus tell him? It's hard for you to kick against the pricks.
Yep.
Go ahead, say it, because you can't say nothing, can you? Because you know that I'm right. That's the thing. You just can't defeat him.
No.
And I think that's why I tell people about having apostles' mindship. Paul being underneath the prison and stuff, coming out, hey, Paul, how was the darkness? He goes, the light liveth in me. You can't defeat someone like that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, that's like whenever, Satan and all the enemies of Christ, they thought that they were actually defeating him by killing him, right? But that was actually, they just fell right into God's plan. Like you said, they can't defeat him.
Yeah, Paul wrote that in Corinthians, if the princes of the earth had known that was the Lord, they never had crucified the Christ.
Yep.
Tricked them. Right. Had no idea that was him in the flesh. Had no idea.
No, they really didn't. They had no idea.
Didn't even cross their mind. Wait a minute. This guy's kind of doing some stuff. They thought he was, okay. He's a trickster. He's a little prophet that God sent down. Had no idea that was him in the flesh. So that's how it proves to me they don't know nothing. They know the Sam's Choice Cola. That's it.
Yeah, I like that. Sam's Choice Cola.
Yeah. So what I'm gonna ask you a little bit about, you were talking about Pangea earlier, and we've all heard that in school, and that they say that this, like everyone always says it happened over millions and billions of years, but I think that this splitting of the land, if that is true, which I'm kind of believing that it is that it happened very like in a quick moment or like what is your speculation of how that actually split? Because if a lot of people look at even our maps today, it looks like all these land masses, they just kind of fit together like it would be a puzzle. So like what kind of event do you think could have split the land like that?
Genesis 10:25.
What's that? Remind me.
In the days of Peleg, the earth was not divided.
And then
the Tower of Babel happened.
Oh, okay.
He split the lands, split the languages. He split everything.
So you think it all happened in that
Yeah, the Tower. I think the Tower of Babel event was the splitting of the continents. Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah, because I'll tell you something else. People have always asked me, well, who did Cain marry? Where was Nod at? Where that city was? Well, if you look at Pangea, and it was east of Eden, what was over there? Italy, right? Well, the Vatican only knows to build on top of stuff. That's every Catholic church is built on top of something around the world.
Yeah.
The Vatican's built on top of Nod. That's why they have all the library down there. They have the Nod's library.
Wow. Yeah, Shane and I were just talking about all the books and information that they have, and it's not accessible to anyone like us.
I'll tell y'all something else. So back to the original where Babylon was, right?
Mm-hmm.
So do you recall hearing in the news a group called ISIS, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember hearing about the group called ISIL?
Yes.
Okay. Which one was more popular?
ISIS.
Okay. What did ISIL stand for?
I never did know. I don't think I may have heard some things, but I don't think I was sure what that stood for.
The Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant.
Okay.
So what did they do? They went to Mosul and they were supposedly destroying all the stuff in Mosul, right? All the ancient artifacts. Well, no, that was the Islamic hand of getting all their pieces out of Mosul. And they destroyed they destroyed the more ladder stuff rather than the real stuff that they wanted. It was the old hand switch, the old Houdini trick.
Right.
Because what stuff they had was, okay, you remember Saddam Hussein's sons?
No.
Hussein and Uday?
Mm-mm.
They were on the deck of cards to capture them.
Huh.
Okay, now this is forgotten about. They said they were, people were told that they were in one of their palaces. No, they were actually at a safe house. They got cornered at a safe house of theirs. And the 101st Airborne surrounded them. And they put about 6,000 rounds of different calibers into that building. Dang. And when they took their pictures, to verify that they had gotten, they only took pictures of the head because that's all that was left was the head. Well, a little known fact was there was a piece of copper in that building that old Daddy-O dug up in Babylon.
Really?
Yeah. So what was it? It was a copper breastplate. It was the armor of a giant.
Oh, man.
And the reason why it was so hush-hush and they didn't talk much about that safe house was because Uday had a lot of the Nephilim artifacts there. And that copper breastplate, all the glass was destroyed around it, but the copper was untouched. Now, you just had 6,000 rounds go through this building of different calibers, anti-tank, 50 caliber, maybe some mortars, who knows? And that copper was untouched, unscratched, but everything around it was destroyed.
Wow. They wanted that technology and like reverse engineer it, probably.
Yeah. Only copper defeats copper.
Wow.
That's cool.
So the brass rounds can do nothing to it.
Do nothing to it. Now, think about this. Why would the Army, about 2 years ago, make a small article in the Army Times about how they're going to full copper jacket rounds? Why would you do that?
Oh, man. Because they need to penetrate through copper armor.
Exactly.
Wow.
Man.
Yeah, I didn't hear about that.
Yeah. Here's another thing. Where are only the major copper deposits in the world?
Is it America?
Yeah, the Great Lakes.
Egypt?
Yep. The Great Lakes only. why did the Phoenicians, why are their ships found in Wisconsin and Michigan and other stuff? Why are they digging up Phoenician? How did the Phoenicians get over there? Why would they be digging for copper in the Great Lakes? Long before, because they dug in it when it was Pangea. They always go back to where they're from. Because copper in the Great Lakes is blue. That's the term blue blood.
Blue. Why is it blue?
Because that's the bloodlines of the Maximilians. Most people who have Rh negative blood are the blue bloods. They have copper based blood, not iron.
Oh man.
What?
Yes.
Yeah, I've heard of that Rh negative.
I've had many lives cut because of Rh negative in the early days.
Wow. Dang. What do you mean?
Like,
I used to be on
like TikTok live.
Yeah, TikTok live. As soon as I mentioned Rh negative, cut it. They'll got me for something. Hateful speech or something.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Because the thing about Rh negative blood is it's a copper based blood, and that's fact.
And don't they say that Rh negative is like Nephilim blood?
It is. It doesn't mean that they're bad, but they do have a trace of serpent seed.
Okay.
Rh negative was the blood that Nimrod had at the tower. That's how he made the super soldiers.
Yeah.
Because the only person who had Rh negative blood was Ham's wife. She was the only Rh negative female on the planet. Yeah. Because she was a descendant of Cain.
Wow. Yeah, and speaking of, like, I've heard of military super soldier programs and stuff like that. Do you have any insight on the military actually doing certain stuff like that, or even being in contact with test subjects that it actually, because I'm sure that some of these test subjects probably get killed, but I'm sure some take too,
Well, you go for like the Übermenschen program, the Nazis, the Supermen, the 1,000-year soldiers. That was real. But as for myself, no, I never personally been around anybody that was enhanced or experimented on, but I only go by like the Übermensch programs of the Nazis. That's the only way anybody really ever knew about it. But that's called transducism, which I don't really, like I said, I got out of that subject, but I'll tell you what it is real fast. It's when they can alter the DNA of the sperm before it hits the egg. Because when the sperm hits the egg, you have a flash of light. And that's you. That is the portal opening from Abraham's bosom to the egg, and you're waiting because God knew you before the womb because you're next to him, and he put you in there. So the flash of light is the actual dimensional shift that makes you. That's your spirit, and that's what they can't replicate.
Wow. Yeah, it's very deep. I think a lot of people today in our society, they oversimplify it, and they want to say like they have an answer for everything and say, oh, it's this way and we know for a fact. But I think reality as we know it is it's not as simple as many may think. And like this guy that we interviewed a couple of weeks ago, his name's Paul, and he was saying something like that too, where he thinks reality is a lot more psychedelic than what we actually perceive it to be. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I've always, if somebody ever asks me about that, it's always in the sense of, well, it's only what you have been told by your parents and what their parents told them.
Right.
If we look at a watch, is that real? Or is it a system? There is no time. God told Moses that time is a day and a night. That's a day, that's 24 hours. There's nothing else. Hours is Horus. That's an Egyptian thing. That's all made up by the Vatican and Constantine and stuff. That calendar months and all that. That we're part of an Egyptian system.
Mm-hmm.
So, but God is time. You know, people say, "Oh, he was a man." No, he became man, but he's whatever he wants to be. So it just, that's what I'm saying. It's like we were all born into a system to watch the watch, watch the clock. Our job starts at this. We got to be here for that. That's all just the system of the world. It's not real. It's just what was put in place, and you just follow it because if you want to make money, then you know what I mean. It's like even money. That's a system. Everything's a system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hence the reason why they said a beast system will take over. You know, you have to be a part of it. The Bible's, you know what I mean? That's what the Bible says, that it has to, it was established because you have to be a part of it. But it is a system.
Yeah.
So my question is, you know, you were talking about the super soldier programs, and I forget what you said it was with the Nazis.
The Ubermenschen, the Supermen.
Yeah, the Ubermensch. Do you think that part of like a lot of these, like say that operation there, where they had the egg, that they're getting those artifacts or like the bodies or even the whole, you know, because I've speculated too, like even the whole 23andMe and all that stuff where they're collecting people's DNA and all that, because you know a lot of people don't even know about Operation Paperclip, where they brought like the Nazi scientists over here
100%.
and stuff like that. Do you think that they're collecting people's DNA to just maybe see, like they're trying to find like a missing link or something like that, and they need to search everyone's DNA, and once they find it, they can do something with it?
Yeah, what they're doing is they're getting everybody who has a serpent seed trace in them, because that's who they need. Remember when I told you that Nimrod opened up the gates to heaven, and he had the Ubermensch ready to fight God? Well, they don't know nothing else. So when they do it again, you know, a lot of Luciferians have claimed when Jesus returns, they're going to try to blow him out of the sky, but they're trying to get everybody together that has a serpent seed to fight God. And in other words, Tower of Babel 2.0.
Right.
Because the Tower of Babel 1.0 was all about DNA.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of, I mean, I had speculated about that. Like they always make it seem so innocent. Like, oh, don't you want to know who your ancestors are? And then these just dumb people, they just offer up their DNA just like nothing, and you know.
Exactly. And the thing is, you go back to RH negative. Okay, those people with that blood have such a, now I don't know if you want to say empath or whatever, you know, I don't know, but it's like psychic or whatever it is. Okay, so I've heard so many stories on people commenting from years ago and this and that about how, you know, like I can say like, okay, maybe your mom knows, like if you fell off your bike or something, your mom knows what happened to you, and you're like, you're just like, oh, mom knows. But if your mom's RH negative, and if everything's frequency, right? Everything is frequency. Sound came before light. Let there be light. And we all can deep dive into frequency and why they took away the bells and, you know, different things, you know, like because it heals wounds. Frequencies heal wounds, make you feel better, whatever. Well, when you holler into the air obscenities because you stubbed your toe or fell off your bike or whatever, it's a frequency.
Right.
And it's up in the atmosphere the whole time. It's like it just stays there, just, you know, it moves around, whatever it does. Now, people with this copper-based blood, well, copper is the most, you know, most conductive thing on the planet. So these people literally can, their blood can pull down the frequency and conduct an image into their head. Your DNA computes it. If it can compute you breathing, it can compute images. And that's how people know that something happened without even seeing it. The frequency got computed in their blood, and it sounds crazy, but then you think about it, people are like, my mom always knew. And I was like, oh, she RH negative? Yes, she is. Well, that's the copper in the blood.
Wow.
They're an empath.
Yeah. And this may be off topic a little bit, but have you ever heard of, I was just thinking about how you said, you speak something into the air and it's out there, where there's been tests done where, as crazy as it sounds, they'll have like a couple plants and stuff, and they speak evil to these plants, like you're stupid, you're like obscenities, like you're saying, and the plant actually starts to die. Have you ever heard of
Yes.
stuff like that?
Yep.
That's
Yep. Same as the
nuts.
water.
Yeah,
It's the water too. The water turns brackish when you play like horrible music to it.
yeah, that's crazy. It's crazy to me.
It's just a frequency. There, everything frequency is hidden from people, but they have frequencies that'll actually close up wounds. That's the whole purpose of a regeneration. Now, when David defeated Goliath, what did God say to him when everybody walked off? He said, "Go cut that head off,"
Hmm.
because he's fixing to regenerate.
Wow. Yeah, and that was because I've heard of man, who's that one guy that wrote the Genesis 6 conspiracy? Have you heard of that book?
Oh yeah, I can't think.
He
If you said
he
it, I know it.
I know he was talking about that very thing about regeneration, and I thought that was crazy. And so, like, these giants, like, even though boom, he's down and you think he's dead, well, the only way to actually really kill him is to
Cut his
chop
head
his
off
exactly.
because he could regenerate. Now, let me ask you this: Now, Goliath and his brothers, when they were among the Philistines and they were the warriors, why they have on copper armor? What does copper do? Why do people wear copper bracelets and copper knee braces and copper back braces? It regenerates, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean that's
Okay.
kind of like a newer thing today too, isn't it?
Well,
Like in the sports
here's what they won't tell
technology.
you.
Yeah.
Yes, here's what they won't tell you. They got that from the Nephilim
Hmm.
because when you think about when I say pure copper is blue. It ain't no penny.
Yeah.
So when you have this copper on and you get it from the Great Lakes like the Phoenicians did, and they're building all this stuff. Think about stories of archaeologists when they find these 1,000, 2,000 year old mummies. Well, one of the more famous stories, but maybe not famous because nobody's ever read it, but they found a little girl's mummy, her corpse in southern Israel, and they found everything kind of in pieces, obviously because it's been a long time. But what they did find that they were intrigued with was her little hand was intact all the way up until the elbow, and even her tendons remained, only because she was holding a piece of copper.
That's crazy.
That is crazy.
And the copper regenerates, just like God said. Okay, David, go over there and get him.
Yeah.
Because he's going to come back here soon.
Yeah.
He's an Nephilim.
So do you think that, because we've gone into crazy land now, right? So if someone were to actually, you know, figure this or come out with it, and it's just kind of like, it reminds me, like, these people you've heard of in the past, they create like a hydrogen powered or a water powered car, right? And then all of a
Yeah,
sudden they're dead. Like, is
yeah.
that something that, like, this is suppressed, and like maybe people have figured this out, but once it kind of gets out in the open, they just like off them and kill them?
Definitely, because that frequency can destroy anything. Here's the thing, too. When God made the earth, brings forth both thorn and thistle, but for us. So it doesn't bring forth any kind of disease or nothing like that. That's all man-made stuff.
Right.
So anybody who comes up with something like frequency, or it's already exists, but just kind of exposes it and gets people, that frequency can like take away cancers and take away any anomalies to the body, just like the med beds used to do, because med beds are frequency. It's a humming sound.
Hmm. And that kind of reminds me of like, which we don't really have access to those things unless you have like a lot of money. But even like those hyperbaric chambers where they increase the oxygen and people are just healed at a rapid rate, right? Is it kind of like that same?
Yeah, they increase the frequency. They tell you it's oxygen, but oxygen.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, there's no
Oh,
difference in oxygen in the atmosphere. What's more going to do for you? I mean,
oh,
anybody listens to
Right.
OSHA or works in that industry of more oxygen in the air, it's actually bad.
well, that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
people wear gas monitors, but why does it alarm above 20.9?
Okay. Yeah.
Or
That's
below it? So that's the thing. It's like, why would you turn it up?
so
Doesn't make
they're
any
lying
sense.
to us about that then.
I'm
It's
saying that
just
makes sense. People come out and say, "Well, I know what like." So they tell you to turn a knob, but wait a minute, you have an equalizer system on it. Like you have there's a sound system on it. Like, why do you have that?
Right.
mhm.
You know, it's just more oxygen. It just doesn't make any sense to me because my gas monitor tells me that if I got too much, then it's bad. So
Yeah.
Yeah, man, there's just I think there's just so much that we've just been lied to, and that's why when we started this podcast, we wanted to call it "Question the Narrative," because I think
yeah,
the narrative that we've been fed is just purely lies. And if anything is out there, like say on the news, it's for a specific purpose into steering you away maybe from the truth and not actually, you know what I'm saying?
yes,
So yeah, that's interesting, man.
Man, there's so much. I mean, basically everything we were taught, our whole lives going to school and about history and just about who we are as a people and this nation is all lies. So we're having to deconstruct, unlearn the lies, and we're having to absorb, new information and uncover things like this. And to me, it's a lot of fun. I don't understand why it angers people. You know what I mean? Because we often get a lot of hate for what they call conspiracy theories. But I mean, how many of these theories have to come true before you stop calling them conspiracy theories? You know?
yeah, and I think everything behind that. This is my opinion too. Okay, we look back at Daniel the prophet. Look at Daniel, if you will.
Yeah.
And Daniel talked about the Babylonian blindness. And we could probably sit here, all three of us, and say America is Mystery Babylon.
Hmm.
And are we all captives like Daniel? My opinion is yes. I think we're all captives in Babylon like Daniel was. And I think we have Babylonian blindness. Now, what counters that? Paul the Apostle said there will be a knowledge explosion. But
Hmm.
and that's God's mercy. So will the knowledge surpass the Babylonian blindness that we're all accustomed to? Well, then that's the whole question. That's when God says, maybe I'll give you in to believeth a lie or whatever.
Yeah.
But right now, us being in Babylon, we have the Prince of Persia holding down our prayers. We have everything that Daniel went through because it is just that's how it happens. The Bible follows all of us. It doesn't matter where you're from.
Yeah.
It follows the atmosphere.
I remember I was just watching one of your videos recently, and that like just touch on that for a sec because that blew my mind when I heard you say that too. Because I think we read these passages, but sometimes we don't actually like meditate on what it's actually saying. And just that statement where you said the Prince of Persia was able to withhold a prayer.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
like people, I don't think they actually think about that really. You know what I'm saying? We just read it and like, oh yeah, nice story,
Exactly.
but that's really intense to think about. I forgot what you were referring to in the video, but I remember when you were talking about that, it made me ponder.
Because we were talking about like going after Iran and how easy it would be, but that the Prince of Persia was a fallen angel that resided in Persia, which is Iran, modern day Iran. And we look at the scripture, what Daniel talked about, and that's true. Daniel's prayer couldn't escape Babylon because of the Prince of Persia fallen angel. And Gabriel couldn't do nothing about it, so they had to send Michael down to get it released. So I mean, that was fact. It was what happened. So you got to think. I mean, that's everybody's like, oh yeah, like you said, oh yeah, cool story, man. But it's like, no, that really happened, and you had to have these two archangels come down and to get this prayer released to get to heaven. Like, that's reality. So can you imagine, what can come of that?
Yeah.
People think God doesn't hear me. Well, maybe not. Because that can happen.
Wow. Yeah.
Be caught up in Babylon. And then Daniel shows so much, like, all his experiences. And another thing too, that I was told that they recovered, Nebuchadnezzar had Daniel interpret the dreams, and Daniel knew the last 70 years, but Nebuchadnezzar had his own journal where he wrote down Daniel's last 70 years. So they have a timeline too.
Yeah.
They know the same thing. So it's like, well, how they know what this is going to happen? Well, it not be anybody's fault, but Nebuchadnezzar, his stuff was recovered too. Yeah. The reason why he was turned into a chimera, forced to eat grass and have wings and hooves and all this weird stuff. And then Daniel's vegetable fast. People think, well, I'm gonna do a vegetable fast because Daniel was just not liking the steaks in Babylon. No, the steaks were people.
What?
Yeah, he didn't want to take place in the vessels. The vessels were people from Jerusalem. Nebuchadnezzar's orgy parties, they were cannibalistic.
Wow.
That's why the hand said, they were having orgies with these people, then eating them. And that's why the hand appeared and said, judgment will come right now.
Yeah. Meeny, tickle you farson.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because of cannibalism and sexual immortality rituals, the sex magic rituals that Crowley and all them did millennia later, whatever.
Yeah. Nothing new under the sun.
Nothing, exactly. Nothing. That's why I said nothing. You're right. Nothing under the sun. It's all the same stuff.
Yeah. Because sometimes the word of God, it'll use words very politely. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like even, it doesn't say like, oh, you had sex with your wife. It says like, oh, he knew her. You know what I mean? Like you know him on a different level.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's not. Yeah. There's so many different things. It doesn't mean that, and there's no. It's such a either it's technology driven or it's just literal. And I'm glad you said that because also in Babylon in the book of Daniel, his three buddies, right? Abednego, Meshach, who's the other one?
Shadrach.
Okay. So where do they go, right? They went to a fiery furnace, okay? 7 times hotter. You could turn this up, right? Mm-hmm. So you got to think, even today, what's the only thing you can turn up hotter without the fuel being limited? Do you know this?
No, what?
Okay. A nuclear reactor. Huh. So you think, well, that's impossible. Well, tell me this. Why did Nebuchadnezzar have them don their hosen, their hats, and their garment? Why did they put on radioactive suits before they went to that fiery furnace?
Yeah, a lot of times, people nowadays, and we've discussed this a lot, just amongst other people, that people think that we're actually like the most intelligent generation that's ever been, but like I believe like what you're saying, that kind of that stuff was back then too, and
yes,
it got destroyed somewhere along the line, and we're just catching back up to it.
Right? Exactly. And I say it only because he had a nuclear reactor that I think that he dug up that from the tower. I think he dug it up from the flood, the antediluvian age, only because Saddam Hussein, who was digging up Babylon since like the late 70s of his own money, he said this, I am Nebuchadnezzar reincarnated.
What?
Well, and that was a true statement from Saddam Hussein. He spent $90 million digging up Babylon. He had so much stuff for the first Gulf War that was taken.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and I had heard about that too.
Yeah.
That he was excavating a bunch of stuff.
Exactly. And here's the reason why he said, I am Nebuchadnezzar reincarnated. Not because he's a king. What did Nebuchadnezzar was known for? digging up stuff that was antediluvian. That's why he became such a tyrant. Digging up stuff that Joshua was told to leave alone.
Right.
So Saddam Hussein said, I'm digging this up, not because I'm a king, because I'm like him. He dug up Babylon. So I think he dug up a nuclear reactor and put the 3 guys in it.
Wow.
Because everything else, you can't, jet fuel burns only hot enough. Paper only burns a certain temp. You can't make anything hotter but a nuclear reactor.
Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah, I never thought of it like that. That's wild.
Yeah, and it isn't okay. So this is kind of from my research. So you're talking about Saddam Hussein. He was using all his money, excavating all this stuff, and he was finding all these artifacts. And wasn't it because of that why we had to pull off this false flag in order to make up some boogeyman so we can go there to get those artifacts? Right?
Yes,
I mean, that's
yes.
kind of what my research kind of led me to.
Yes, because he didn't exactly get what they wanted from the Iraqi freedom. Now, 91, the Gulf War, they made up the whole thing about he did invade Kuwait. I don't think it was because of the oil. I don't know why he did it. Saddam Hussein was in the U.S. Army in 1958. He enlisted, so I mean he was CIA guy.
That's what I was gonna say. He's CIA. I thought.
Yeah. So I don't know exactly, but I know in 91 they got some stuff from him because he was digging and they got wind of it, but they didn't have what he dug up after that and what they went back to get.
And that was
their
the
queen.
egg.
The egg. Yeah, the egg. Yeah. Osiris, the 2 mummies.
Wow.
Wow.
What do you I know that you probably don't know, but what do you think? Do you think that they did what they intended to do with that egg? Like, are they successful? Did they resurrect that being, or
Yeah.
like what?
Yeah, because I hate to say it, but what was Ishtar known for?
Isn't it
Androgyny and transgenderism? You couldn't worship her in Mesopotamia without changing your gender.
Wow. Isn't there another thing like sorry to interrupt, but the whole androgyny, or like with all that, wasn't there another thing like called Anana or like something weird like that? Is that right?
Yeah, that was her name too, Inanna. Yeah, that was her name in Greek. Yeah, that's all Ishtar. She's all the same. You couldn't worship her without, being androgynous. The whole transgender thing, because that's always been. I mean, that's if you look at Sodom and Gomorrah, it wasn't the whole thing about liking the same sex. That's honestly that's not mentioned in my perspective in the scripture. The Sodom and Gomorrah was what God was worried about, because that was a lot of strange flesh happenings going on.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of different things. Like Lot's wife was literally the last biological woman in that city.
Wow.
So, it was more than that. People say sodomites. A sodomite isn't gay. Gay is made up word. That's a slang word.
Right.
They're sodomites.
Yeah.
They are a military person that but they like the same. They like the same sex.
Yeah.
That's not like it's just, and they'll tell you that's what they are.
Yeah, they're violent. They're
That's what I'm
vicious
saying.
people.
That Sodom and Gomorrah was like when the angels. I mean, we know the story. The angels. That's how I know they look like men, because it says that we want the 2 men. They didn't know they were angels.
Yeah.
So we want the 2 men, have them come out. And then what does it say? They were the 2 angels blinded the men of the town, and they were all grabbing for booty. And that's what it says. They were grab assing.
Yeah.
Because they were so caught up in it. They couldn't stand it. So they're all grabbing for butt. And I mean, and that's the whole story about Sodom and Gomorrah. And it was just so much happening there. It goes way beyond just like, oh, these 2 guys like each other.
Yeah. It's a spirit that they have.
Yeah, and
right?
it's a spirit over America, like Ishtar's returned. That's how I know that they've accomplished what they want, because that stuff came out of nowhere all of a sudden, and you had to abide by it. Because here's the thing: we used to giggle. I have family members that were a drag queen. You know what I mean? That happened,
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't like it wasn't pushed on you. If you wanted to go see a show with a drag queen, you just go see the show.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean? They weren't reading stories to kids. They had nothing to do with that, because that wasn't their thing. They were entertaining adults.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And you look at Richard Simmons, and he was happy, and he made dress like a woman. But that was his business. He
Yeah.
helped people lose weight. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't. They never pushed that on anybody
Yeah.
until now, because it used to be, well, do you agree with it? Well, no, but that's your business. Okay, and end it there. But
Yep.
now it's like, well, you have to like it. You have to accept me. But it's like, okay, no, you're good. But then it's like, no, that's not enough. I want to be in your home. I
Yeah.
want to be with your children. I want to, and all these things. And I'm not saying that every one of them is bad, but I'm just telling you that the pattern changed.
Yep.
And it became what it became in Mesopotamia, because that's what they were forced to do.
Yeah, I totally agree. Have you read this? Have you read any books by Jonathan Kahn? He,
Yes. Yeah, he
I,
did. Yeah, he did the one about the Return of the Gods. 100%. That's exactly what it is.
yep, this is exactly what it is. I haven't.
He
Yep.
knows. Yeah, Ishtar's back. Yeah, when I seen that, that's like when I always the people laugh when I'm on the other podcast. I'm like, Ishtar, that damn witch. She's just. If I don't know who that was, I could have done something about it, but it just didn't happen like that.
Right.
Yeah.
What about speaking of the egg and the queen? What about that ceremony that Queen Elizabeth held, where she touched the egg and it lit up the triple helix 3-strand DNA?
I didn't know that.
What?
That
What is that?
y'all had seen? That's been all over TikTok.
I didn't even. Did she? I didn't
Yeah.
know she did that. That's a triple stand. That's the stuff I've been saying forever. That's what they've been looking for, because the third helix is the parasite.
Okay, so yeah, you got to look this up when we get done with the podcast, because there's this huge ceremony. This was recent, within the last few years, over there in Europe, England, somewhere in Europe, where the Queen and all of them, the royal army, all up gathered around outside in the grass, and they had these like Christmas tree lights arranged, and it went up to a tree. Anyway, she walks up to this egg and touches it, and it activated the lights. The lights started lighting up. The strand of DNA lit up, and it ran all the way up the tree.
And it was 3 helixes.
Yes.
That's where they come from. That's the parasitic Maximilian bloodline. That's the third helix. That only hematologists can find who belong to a serpent seed, because they're blood workers.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
think
a whole
about this
other-
too. You remember ivermectin?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, what does ivermectin do? It kills parasites, right?
Right.
The vaccine had the third helix. That's why
That's
they
what I was
got so pissed at ivermectin. People taking ivermectin because it was killing the third helix.
Yeah.
That's
I mean, you got
so what do you think we're trying?
some people are venom glands.
What?
Where? Like in their mouth?
Yeah,
Or-
yeah, Dr. Artis, yeah, that he was saying how people were growing venom glands from the vaccine. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Oh, man.
people were getting serpent, like serpent like like their eyes and just different. I mean, it blows your mind, but it's like, but I'm like, you know what? Yeah, that's what they do. I just it's crazy to hear, but I'm like, oh yeah, well, doesn't surprise me now. All the stuff I know.
Oh yeah, doesn't surprise me a bit. So you think they're trying to like create some sort of a literal through the jabs, trying to create
Through the
some
jabs, yeah, just like Nimrod did at the tower. Yeah, serpent seed vaccine. Yeah.
So they want to basically turn the human race into all serpent seeds. That's their goal.
Yeah, so they can have an army ready, entire Babel 2.0.
Yeah,
Wow.
because I mean, we know like there's some like nanotech and stuff like that in the vaccines, and
Yeah.
I've heard that whoever has that in their bloodstream, like they can just activate that, and that could be just turning them into like you're saying, an army, like just zombies that are just on autopilot, and they're just doing whatever that programming is meant to do.
Yeah, yeah. Just like when Russ Dizdar wrote The Black Awakening. That could be another show for y'all, but yeah,
Yeah, we're gonna
Russ
have to have
Dizdar
you
knew a
again.
lot.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. But yeah, so they could, yeah, the vac. I mean, it's how can you scare somebody into something so simple as the cold, but you get them to take this experimental thing that nobody knows nothing about. There's like so much controversy behind it, and they're like, oh yeah, well look how we have enough doses for everybody within 2 months. Like, okay, you didn't plan that,
Right.
It's just because, like I said this a long time ago, when a bioweapon is made, the antidote is made on the same table.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They don't make it later on.
Yeah.
So it's just, but yeah, then this is doctors saying how, yeah, that there's snake venom in this, in this vaccine. And you think about, they take it so seriously when it says, you will bruise man's heel, he'll bruise your head. They don't like that.
Yeah.
That's their, literally the reptilian who got into the Garden of Eden, and it says he was the most, cunning. That doesn't mean he was a smart ass. It means he was the most technologically advanced. He got into the garden because he had a Stargate. The Garden of Eden wasn't on this realm.
Interesting.
So he got into the garden and was like, 2 legs and 2 arms and did his thing. Mm-hmm. And then he got punished, like, okay, well, come in here. Now you're going to carve your belly. So, I mean, it's like, that's the thing about it. Like, that was a literal dimensional shift event.
Yeah.
And it says it. He was the most cunning. No, he was the most technologically advanced animal.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. And, you were talking about the Rh negative, and I think I remembered that guy, was his name Gary Wayne, the Genesis 6?
Gary Wayne. Yeah, Gary Wayne. Yep.
Yeah, because I was hearing him talk about too, like, we were just talking about the Queen of England and all that. Like, none of the queens or like royals, because he's like, they're called like royals, and like L is like angel, or isn't it, like, or of the Lord or something, is something like that, isn't it? Like,
yes.
That's why you got Michael, Gabriel, like it all kind of ends with that. But like these royals, how they all, like, you don't get to that position unless you have that blood.
That blood, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's just like, if you want to go back to Egypt talk again, King Tut's dead. Akhenaten. Akhenaten is, for a fact, he has an alien, if you will, DNA. And the Swiss figured that out. You know what I mean? Like, they took his mummy. He doesn't have all human DNA. And if you look at, like, say the royal family, right? Okay. In the book of Enoch, what does he describe the fallen angels as? Vipers. Okay. They're always serpents. And then you look at like the different indigenous cultures of like the Western Hemisphere, Amarahu, Quetzalcoatl, they're all serpents. Everything's a damn serpent.
Wow.
And then you look at, like, got to have this blood, right? You talk about the serpent seed, and it has to be in their blood, and the blue bloods, like a lot of rappers say, sipping Cristal with the blue bloods. That's the higher Maximilian serpent families. And where are they from? Mars. Where are they from before that? Rahab. Where are they from before that? Well, that's the ones that were thrown out. They're all a bunch of serpents. They're a bunch of Nakash.
Wow.
Even the Hebrew word Nakash is serpent, the prosecutor.
Right.
So they're always snakes. Everything's a damn snake.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, this has been a great episode. We're kind of getting on the 2-hour mark here. I'm just, for the listener's sake, it's hard to get through all of that in one setting, but I mean, I'd love this conversation so far. And if you're willing, I'd love to have you on again because we're just basically scratching the surface, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Um,
Yeah, I could talk. We could talk a whole lot more. That's the thing.
yeah.
People will stick around for 2 hours on this.
Oh yeah, definitely. 100%. I mean, yeah, I agree. But yeah, if you'd be willing to come back on, we'd love to have you, and we could
I'd be honored. Yeah, I'd be honored to come back.
okay, great, man. Well, we're gonna close off here, but can you just go ahead and just let everyone know again where they can find you and how to reach you and all that good stuff?
I'm on TikTok, Big John 24982. And if they have any questions, I'll try to answer in the comments. And then, of course, I hope that y'all announce that I can come here whenever y'all would like me to. And then on YouTube, I have Big John Great Adventures. I don't post much on there, and then also Global Watchman News YouTube channel. They have a lot of different things I've talked about on there.
Awesome. Awesome, man. Well, it's been an amazing conversation, a lot of new info for us, and I'm sure it's for our listeners as well. But yeah, like we like to say always, it's just these certain topics we want to question the narrative of everything. So
Definitely,
yeah,
yeah,
Big John. I've really enjoyed this. It's super interesting stuff, and it's always great to converse with like-minded people. That
100%.
that aren't afraid to question the narrative and kind of go against the grain and search for the truth, because the truth is a hard thing to find in this day and age that we live in. So,
Especially through all the Babylonian blindness.
the
yeah,
Babylonian blindness. That's it.
yeah. Like in Proverbs, it says to buy the truth and sell it not. Like we need that. Like hold on to that. You know what I'm saying?
100%.
Yeah. Well, man, it's been an honor to have you on here, and we hope to catch you again very soon.
Sounds good.
Yes,
All right,
sir.
Thank you
man.
much.
Thank
All
you, Big John.
right. God bless.
God bless y'all.
All right, guys, that concludes our episode for today, and we appreciate you guys listening in. And we just want to mention to you guys that we are in the process now of trying to get listener support. Obviously, this takes time and effort to do this work. And if you guys feel so inclined to do, we just love for you to support us. We're going to be coming up with some episodes in the near future that are only for subscribers. So if you guys are wanting to access the extra content that we're going to be coming up with, then you guys are going to have to jump on that subscription. And any other donations are appreciated. And we just thank you guys all for hanging out with us and discussing these very controversial topics. A lot of people don't want to hear or listen to this, but we appreciate you guys for listening and spending your time with us. And we just ask that you would share this content, because it actually will push us out in the algorithm the more that you share. So if you would just please share this with all your friends and family and social media, we greatly appreciate all that, guys. So just have a good evening, and God bless.